All right. Hi, I'm Elizabeth from tfa.com, and I'm here with Cameron Stewart, artist extraordinaire, and we're gonna. He has visited Portland after Emerald City. So, what was Emerald City Comic Con like for you this year?
It was really great. It's actually the first time that I've been, done this convention. I've heard a lot of great things about it from other artists, and it was fantastic. It was really super busy and amazing, friendly people, and I really liked the art book, the charity art book,
Oh, yeah.
which is a great idea, and it was for a great cause. So all in all, it was a fantastic convention.
Excellent. Well, how did you get started in comics? Like, what were you reading when you were growing up?
Well, when I was growing up, I read a lot of, I think I was more of a DC kid than a Marvel kid. I remember very early on reading Wonder Woman when a lot of my male friends were reading Batman, Superman, or whatever, and I was always made fun of because I was not reading comics. So I read a lot of that stuff, and then I also grew up in England as well. I was born in Canada, but when I was very young, I lived in England, and so I read a lot of British comics as well. Everything from the children's comics like the Beano and the Dandy to things like 2000 AD. And so, yeah, I kind of have an interesting kind of mix of both British and American comics in my childhood. How I started in the comics industry, I've always wanted to do comics ever since I was a kid. I don't think I've ever had, some kids think of being a fireman or an astronaut or whatever, and I don't think I've ever had any desire to do anything other than comics. And it was sometime in high school that I realized that you could actually, people did this for a career. It's actually something I did. So I went to the San Diego Comic-Con with a portfolio and with a little mini comic that I'd written and drawn and self-published. I took it to Kinko's and made 100 copies of it, stapled it myself, and brought it and just showed it around to different artists whose work I really liked, and got a really great response to it. And I ended up having a meeting with Shelley Bond at Vertigo, and she really liked my stuff. And I'd also talked with Brent Morrison and shown him some things in my portfolio, which were like Invisible's fan art, which he took a great liking to, and so suggested that I talk to Shelley, and Shelley, really liked my work and gave me her card and said that I should be working for DC. And then there was like about 5 months of nothing, where I thought, I just went back to my retail job and thought that nothing was going to happen. And then I got a call from her, and she was interested in hiring me. I ended up getting hired to do Scooby-Doo. It was my first work. And then from that, I started inking. I was inking some books for Shelley. I did a book for Vertigo called Dead Embers, inking over War and Peace. And it was that first brought me to the attention of Ed Brubaker, and which is eventually led into working on Catwoman. And, everything just kind of fell into place. And then, the rest is history, I guess.
All right. Well, your style is pretty versatile. It goes for a bunch of different types of stories. You've done superhero, and you've done some sort of horror with the BPRD Hellboy, and then now sort of more of a pin-up type with the Suicide Girls.
Yeah.
So how have you varied your style for that? Like, how have you developed your style to kind of encompass everything?
I'm always very wary of trying to deliberately create a style. I always feel like style is something that happens naturally when I draw, and I see a lot of younger artists, really focused on they have to learn how to draw a particular way, or draw hair a particular way, or whatever to be their style. And I think that style just happens subconsciously when you draw, and so I always try and draw from the gut and in a way that is appropriate to the story that I'm telling. So if I'm working on something like Sea Guy, I'll, because it's this kind of absurdist superhero thing, I try and draw in like a very kind of light cartoony style. If I'm doing something like Suicide Girls, obviously I'm focused on creating, attractive, as you say, pin-up-y kind of stuff. My own webcomic is something entirely different. It's just what I feel is appropriate for the story that's being told, and I don't ever really want to do one style for everything, because that gets boring for me, and it's interesting for me to experiment, to try different things. It makes it difficult for people who expect a single style each time. And certainly there are people who have, read my Batman comics, who, find out that I do a webcomic and will go and look at that because it couldn't be more different than my Batman stuff. Maybe it's not exactly what they want or whatever. And so it's the same mind that's putting it out, but it's just different approaches to different material.
So when you were doing Batman and Robin, you kind of stepped into a book that was really defined by kind of the Grant Morrison, Frank Whiteley team. I mean, how was that, stepping into that to do some issues?
It was very flattering, very amazing. It was the first, Catwoman was probably, prior to that, Catwoman was my first sort of, major comic that I'd done, big superhero comic. But even that, because of the nature of that book, it was still sort of a second tier, kind of niche thing. It wasn't like a big AAA title, that superhero comic or whatever. So Batman and Robin was my first real jump into doing like the really prominent superhero comics. Frank Whiteley is probably my favorite artist currently. I think he's fantastic, and so what I tried to do when taking over that book was to try and do something that was tonally consistent with what he had done. It's very influenced by his work, but I tried not to directly copy him. I just tried to do something that was in the spirit of it still, but still bring my own thing to it. So hopefully it was successful. But it was fantastic. I'm really happy to be a part of that series.
Well, with your experience with Catwoman, what do you think of the casting of Anne Hathaway as Catwoman in the new Batman movie?
I think, it's the process that always happens whenever there are announcements made about superhero movies is there's an announcement made, and then the fan community flips out, and they can't believe that this travesty is happening. They hate the photos or whatever, or even just the mention of it. And then over time, you can't really tell anything from a press release. And over time, things might reveal themselves, and in a way that might, I just think back to when Heath Ledger was announced as the Joker, and people thought Christopher Nolan was crazy. And then when the movie came out, everyone was like, oh yeah, wow, that was really good. And so I feel like with two movies under his belt that are quite, popular and critically successful, I think he's earned the trust to just kind of say, okay, let's see, she's a very attractive woman who has got a lot of, it's not like they cast Judah Friedlander in the role or something. I don't really understand why people are so averse to her casting, because she seems fine to me. The one thing that I guess that people are thinking is that I don't know if she's known for being more of like a dark, kind of like smoldering femme fatale kind of character. Her work, as far as I think of it, is kind of more lighter. But we'll see. I trust Christopher Nolan, and hopefully it'll turn out right.
Sweet. Well, your next project upcoming is the Suicide Girls with IDW.
Yep.
So how did you make the leap from Batman to Suicide Girls? How did you become connected to this?
I actually know some girls who are models on that side.
Okay.
They're just friends of mine. And I was talking about possibly doing some merchandise for them. And so they put me in contact with Missy, who's the owner and site runner of Suicide Girls. And I just contacted her on my own, and I said, I'm a comic book illustrator, and here's some of my work, and maybe we could work together doing some merchandise. I didn't know what it would be, like a calendar or something. And she wrote back, and she was like, oh my God, we're doing a comic book. Like, this couldn't be better timing. We're doing a comic book. And she said, would you be interested in drawing a comic? And this was about a week before the San Diego Comic Con. So, and she said, that she was going to be there, and we should meet. And so I went to San Diego, and I met with her and with with Mariah Humer, who's the editor, and Steve Niles, and we talked about it, and it sounded like something that I thought would be fun to do, but unfortunately the timing wasn't right, and you know, I was only really able to commit to doing covers, and what was interesting to me was to do character designs for because the comic is a group of fictional suicide girls. They're not based on the real models. They're fictional ones, but I thought it would be an interesting challenge to design these characters and make them feel authentic and like they could be, you know, real girls. And so initially, I was only hired to do covers and character designs, and then over time, it's funny. I was slowly convinced to doing more and more, and I did these 2-page backups in the issues written by Steve Niles, and you know, those were received well, and then I was convinced to actually ink the book over David Hahn, who's doing pencils for it. So my involvement has kind of grown,
expanded,
and I'm sure that by next year I'll be CEO of IDW at the rate that it's going. So. But,
can you tell us anything about the content, like the storyline of? I mean, it is. You know.
Yeah, it's a fictional story. It's set in a world that's kind of, you know, just slightly to the left of our own, where there's like this kind of very conservative, right-wing, religious corporation called Way of Life that is doing its best basically to impose conformity and extinguish individuality. And so the Suicide Girls are like a Charlie's Angels A-team kind of group that are throughout history have been, you know, railing against this and trying to stand up for freedom and individuality. So, you know, I mean, it ain't Hemingway, but it's a lot of fun. And it's a bunch of, you know, kick-ass girls with tattoos and piercings and weapons, and they're you know, kind of looks like an action comedy storyline. So it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah. And you've done some BPRD in the past. You've done some stories that have now been collected in the new BPRD hardcover.
Right.
Have you seen that?
I have. Yeah. Only actually only because people were bringing them to have me sign it at the Comic-Con. So, but I'm sure I'll get a copy. But yeah, I mean, that story that I did is many years ago now. It's like five years ago, maybe 6, and it was just because they were putting together a trade collection, and they actually were like 5 or 6 pages short, and the thing, and so they asked if I'd be interested in doing an original story with Mignola, which was fantastic. It's very exciting to be asked to do that. So I of course agreed to do it. And Mike wrote it, and I drew it, and so that's given me my little foothold in the Hellboy universe. And, you know, hopefully lead to one.
Well, you've got your webcomic, but if you had like your choice of like creator-owned comics, what sort of genre would you do? Like, what would be your dream sort of project?
You know, that's a difficult question to answer because I have a lot of ideas for different things, and like we were talking about earlier about with drawing style, I don't want to limit myself to one thing. And you know, if you look back over my career and the things that I've done, they're all quite different. I mean, the book that I did for Oni Press with my friend Ray Fox, The Apocalypse Days, is like an action comedy, you know, like not futuristic, but like post-apocalyptic story, you know, which is completely different than my webcomic or whatever. You know, maybe that's sort of similar because it's an all-girl rock band and sort of similar to Suicide Girls or whatever. But I would love to do, you know, a horror story. I have an idea for a horror story. I have an idea for a science fiction story. You know, I would like to do, you know, like my webcomic still has elements of autobiography in it as well. You know, like there's a lot of different things that interest me, and I really don't want to get pigeonholed into doing one particular thing. And a lot of the cartoonists or musicians or filmmakers that I admire are people who continually surprise with what they do. You know, they'll come out with something new that seems to come out of left field and not at all what you'd expect it to be. and I really want to be that type of person. And so I don't want to just be known as a horror guy or a science fiction guy or whatever, you know. And I think just different moods create different story ideas. And to me, it's a challenge to, you know, maybe if I do horror comics and do really well at those, and people think that, you know, I'm very good at doing horror, for example. Maybe I might like to turn around and do like a humor, you know, and just try, rather than just sit back and go, okay, well, I know I can do that, so I'll just do another one. It's more of a challenge to then try something completely different and try and be that successful as well. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things that I would like to do. The one thing that I'm more interested in doing over anything else is I would like to do more of my own material rather than working on you know, Marvel and DC or things. That stuff is fun, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had and in doing things like that, and I will certainly do more of them if the project is something that appeals to me. But there's a particular creative satisfaction in doing something of my own, where I'm writing and drawing as well. You know, instead of just being an illustrator for somebody else's creation.
Well, thanks so much for your time.
No problem.
And look for the Suicide Girls in April on tv.com.